Welcome to the debate. Today, we are diving deep into a core tension that every global beverage importer faces: the actual longevity of the product versus the absolute necessity of trade velocity. We're going to focus specifically on the wholesale viability of Monster energy drinks.
And it's a critical issue. In the fast-moving consumer goods sector, FMCG, margins are incredibly tight and time is, well, it's currency. When you're managing huge container loads going to diverse, often very hot climates, places like Asia, the Middle East, Africa, that tension between preserving quality and just raw commercial viability, that dictates success or failure.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our central question today, which is really about where the priority lies. When you're managing bulk inventory for global trade, do you prioritize the scientific realities of product degradation and storage conditions? Or do you focus on the logistical necessity of managing that commercial window defined by the best buy date? Now, I'm going to argue that the science, the formulation stability, the environmental control, that is the paramount factor. It defines the absolute maximum quality you can achieve.
And I'm going to come at this from a slightly different angle. I'll acknowledge that product science sets the ultimate limit, of course. But the greater, and I'd say more immediate challenge for any wholesale operation is the complex logistics and inventory planning that are dictated by that best buy date and, aggressive market demands. For the importer, managing the financial exposure tied to that date, that's the number one commercial hurdle.
Okay, so let's define the parameters of that scientific limit you mentioned. Monster energy drinks, they have an official shelf life that ranges from about 18 to 24 months, and that's provided they're stored optimally. This 18 to 24-month time frame is crucial because it really signifies the point of peak quality. We're talking maximum flavor fidelity, ideal carbonation, and critically, the advertised potency of all the added nutrients.
And that peak quality marker is tied directly to the date stamped on the can, MAR 3025, for example. In FMCG trade, everyone understands that's a best buy date. It's a quality standard, not a hard safety expiration date, especially for shelf-stable goods like energy drinks.
Precisely. But maintaining that quality demands a very strict environment. You need stable storage conditions, ideally between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 10 to 21 Celsius. When those conditions fail, the quality erodes, and it erodes fast. Heat is the great accelerant here. It just speeds up the loss of dissolved CO2, which leads directly to a flat flavor and a really poor mouthfeel. And more subtly, UV light exposure degrades sensitive components, chief among them the B vitamins, especially riboflavin or B2.
Right. And you're focusing on the nutritional aspect, which I'll grant you is a big part of the brand promise.
It's essential. The main stimulant, caffeine, is highly stable, yes. But if a consumer opens a can of Monster and finds it flat, or, lacking that vitamin kick because the riboflavin has been broken down by light, the whole energy experience is fundamentally compromised. And we also have to segment the product line chemically. The original and ultra varieties, they use mostly stable artificial compounds, so they're far more robust than, say, a Java Monster or Juice Monster, which has natural fruit extracts. Those more perishable lines demand much stricter adherence to their windows.
Okay, I see why you're emphasizing the chemical journey. But for the wholesale importer who's managing container loads and trying to optimize profit across borders, the priority shifts. It shifts from that gradual, subtle quality loss to the immediate financial commercial risk defined by that date on the can. As soon as that best buy date gets close, the product's saleability just plummets. You're often looking at massive write-downs or deep discounts just to clear the stock.
But if the underlying quality is already shot because of poor conditions, then that commercial risk begins long before the date is even met.
That's a strong point. However, logistics demands immediate action. That 18 to 24-month lifespan, it forces a very strict operational discipline. It defines the timelines for consolidating containers, the required sales velocity, and it demands rigorous stock management, primarily first in, first out. FIFO. In high-volume trade, whether it's technically safe past the date is often frankly irrelevant. If the taste and carbonation are off, the product is commercially dead. And on top of that, you have to prioritize vigilance on the can's physical integrity. dents, rust, swelling. Because physical damage can cause an immediate rejection, much faster than any gradual chemical change.
Okay, let's focus on that mechanism of quality degradation then, especially in transit. I would argue that the greatest long-term failure point is actually the subtle, chronic temperature abuse, not some catastrophic physical damage. Fluctuating temperatures during storage, hot in the day, cool at night, that stresses the can's seal. And more critically, high sustained heat accelerates the chemical breakdown of ingredients, including the artificial sweeteners. This leads directly to that sickly sweet, or even worse, a distinctly metallic off-taste.
That's an interesting point, but I'd frame it a little differently. While yes, chronic temperature abuse is sort of the silent killer of quality, causing that gradual decline, a bulging can presents an immediate, non-negotiable safety risk.
And why is that commercially more important than the gradual degradation?
Because a bulge is usually a sign of significant gas buildup, often from some kind of internal contamination or microbial spoilage. It's an immediate breach of sterility. For a wholesaler, that's catastrophic. A single compromised can found during an inspection can lead to the refusal of an entire pallet, maybe even the whole container. So physical integrity checks, looking for dents, rust, and especially bulging, that's the importer's primary defense against immediate commercial loss. It doesn't matter what the date says at that point.
A bulging can is a sign of extreme acute failure, I agree. But temperature abuse is endemic. It's the silent killer of the brand experience. If a customer gets a product that's already flat and tastes like syrup, the long-term commercial failure is an eroded brand trust. You can't prioritize a reactive check over proactive control of the environment that ensures quality in the first place.
But we're talking wholesale trade, where immediate financial exposure is paramount. The logistics chain has to eliminate the highest impact, most immediate failure points first. If we assume the can structure is sound, then managing that date takes precedence.
Which brings us back to chemistry informing your inventory planning. Your logistics have to be chemically informed. Importers dealing in stable varieties like Original or Ultra, they have a bigger operational buffer. The formulations are resilient, they have flexibility, and they can probably push the useful commercial life closer to that full 24 months.
That flexibility is a benefit, yes.
But then you consider the fragility of the Juice and Java lines. When you're sourcing something like the popular Mango Loco from Vietnam, for example, the natural sugars and fruit extracts demand a much shorter commercial window. In tropical climates, the risk of spoilage signs like separation or sedimentation, even with pasteurization, it goes up dramatically. An importer has to treat those SKUs as having an effective shelf life that's maybe 6 to 12 months shorter than an Ultra.
I'm just not convinced the solution is to avoid high-demand, high-risk SKUs. The market dictates the mix, and while we know the Juice or Java varieties are more fragile, they lose quality faster, sure. The commercial mandate is to move all stock efficiently to meet that demand. The solution then has to be in adopting advanced logistical practices to compensate. This means ensuring first-in, first-out rotation is rigorously enforced at every single touchpoint. It's a mechanical discipline that ensures the clock on the most fragile products is running the fastest.
But if the system just relies on speed and FIFO without accounting for that inherent chemical instability, you're just making sure that a compromised product reaches the consumer faster. We know B vitamins decrease. Flavor decomposes over time, regardless of FIFO. If a sensitive Mango Loco SKU hits a hot warehouse after 9 months in transit, its potential for taste degradation is far higher than a 9-month-old Ultra. You're prioritizing the system over the scientific reality of the product inside the can.
No, I'm prioritizing the management of the system to operate within the constraints set by the science. That 18 to 24-month window is fixed. Operational excellence, specifically rigorous FIFO and strategic placement of short-dated stock, it maximizes the utility of that window. We can't control the climate of the destination market, but we can control the handling speed and the sequence.
But let's talk about mitigating risk in overseas shipping, where these two pressures really collide. The aluminum can is robust, but it's not infinitely protective. We know the liquid inside is highly acidic. Overextended multi-month transit times, especially in non-climate-controlled containers crossing the equator,
That heat accelerates the degradation of the can's internal epoxy lining.
The protective coating.
Yes, exactly. The acidic liquid starts to interact with the exposed aluminum, and that introduces metallic notes into the flavor. This time-dependent chemical change just inherently compromises taste quality, regardless of how reputable the seller is. The chemical clock is always running.
That's a compelling argument, because transit is often the biggest uncontrolled variable. But have you considered how sophisticated supply chain expertise addresses this? For importers sourcing large volumes of Monstera at competitive wholesale prices, leveraging trusted international partners is the strategic mitigation.
And how does a sourcing partner neutralize the inevitable chemical aging from a long sea voyage?
They neutralize the pre-shipment aging. For instance, working with specialists like Asia Grocery Wholesale, AGW, is essential when you're sourcing from a hub like Vietnam. AGW manages stock rotation and storage conditions aggressively before the shipment even leaves port. This minimizes the time the product just sits idle in a warehouse.
Meaning, they maximize its shelf life once it arrives at the destination.
Precisely. They ensure the product enters the global logistics stream with the maximum remaining shelf life. So they're shipping stock with 16 to 18 months left, not 10 or 12. Their ability to consistently supply fresh stock across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa directly impacts the viability of the export. It's a logistical buffer that is the commercial answer to the aging risk you described.
But that reliance places the importer's entire commercial viability on the assumption that the partner is maintaining those critical 50 to 70 degree conditions in the sourcing warehouse. If the product is exposed to temperature swings pre-shipment, that accelerates CO2 loss and the degradation of B vitamins. The product could leave the facility already chemically compromised, even if the best buy date is months away. The quality guarantee is only as strong as the weakest link in that temperature chain.
But the commercial reality is that importers can't audit every warehouse globally. They have to rely on the established integrity and the freshness guarantee of their supply partners. The logistical solution, sourcing reliably fresh product from a controlled environment, is the most practical, scalable method for mitigating the risks of the product's formulation, especially for fragile varieties like Mango Loco. Expert supply chain management is designed to minimize the impact of those chemical vulnerabilities.
And I still maintain that the chemical and physical vulnerabilities, the B vitamin degradation, loss of carbonation, metallic notes from acid attack, ultimately dictate true viability. If you ignore the heat and UV exposure, you get a flat, off-tasting product that will lead to market rejection, regardless of how expertly the stock was rotated. The ultimate judge is the consumer's taste buds.
But if you ignore the logistical need for strict FIFO, precise scheduling, and reliance on reputable sourcing partners who guarantee freshness, you end up with rejected pallets because of expired dates or physical damage, and that's an immediate, catastrophic commercial failure that destroys profitability overnight. Both are essential, but the logistical hurdle is the one that most frequently hits the balance sheet.
Look, we can agree that the best buy date is a mark of quality, not immediate danger. However, the integrity of the actual Monster Energy experience, that bold flavor, the carbonation, the nutritional boost, is intensely sensitive to storage temperature and time. Ignoring these scientific limitations for logistical convenience will, inevitably, lead to a diminished product and disappointed consumers. The science defines the boundary of acceptable trade.
And I wholeheartedly agree that poor quality compromises trade long-term, but successful, high-volume global distribution requires seamlessly integrating that product science with commercial reality. The logistical challenge is maximizing the utility of that 18 to 24-month quality window through rigorous inventory rotation and strategic sourcing that guarantees the freshest possible stock. Working with a dependable partner like Asia Grocery Wholesale, AGW, mitigates the risk of receiving stock that's already aged or temperature abused, ensuring the inventory is commercially viable from day one.
It's clear that both the inherent scientific stability of the Monster Energy product and the logistical skill used to manage its distribution are absolutely essential to profitable global wholesale trade.
It really does remain a dialogue between the lab and the warehouse, a crucial balance importers have to master. And there's certainly more to explore here, especially when you're dealing with high-demand SKUs like Monster Original, Ultra, and Mango Loco from the Vietnam market.
For those interested in securing fresh, bulk orders of these varieties, we'd recommend engaging with the expertise found at Asia Grocery Wholesale.